This is Breaking News Edition. I'm Benita Levine. Another emotional day for the Israeli nation. The next set of Israeli hostages is heading home after being held captive by Hamas for more than 7 weeks since the terror onslaught on the 7th of October. They have been handed over to the Red Cross, and Red Cross vehicles have been seen driving through the Rafah crossing just moments ago. Now, it's the final day of a truce deal, a truce that may be extended again, this time by 4 days. Day 54 of the war. Today's list of 10 hostages is said to include women and teenage girls and boys. The Bibas family are not on the list, and the IDF is looking into what it calls a cruel claim by Hamas that mother Shiri and her sons, the youngest hostage, 10-month-old Kfir Bibas and 4-year-old Ariel Bibas, have been killed. The IDF says Hamas bears responsibility for the safety of all the hostages, even if Hamas did in fact hand the Bibas family to another terror faction in Khan Yunis. Now, while families wait to receive the freed hostages, at this hour, 155 people remain in captivity, including 9 children. Earlier, Hamas saying in a short statement that they had released 2 Russian-Israeli hostages as a gesture to President Vladimir Putin. They were handed over to the Red Cross earlier. Meanwhile, Benjamin Netanyahu is reiterating that Israel will fight against Hamas until the end. Our correspondent Nicole Zedek is now at a hotel at the Dead Sea, so let's find out the latest there, because Nicole, thousands of Israelis have had to evacuate their homes, of course, since the 7th of October. Many don't know when they'll be able to go back. Tell us more. What is happening there?
Many don't know when they'll be able to go back, but more importantly, they're waiting to see who's going to be coming back with them. I'm with these residents that have evacuated from Kibbutz Be'eri, and more than 24 of their community members were kidnapped. Now, as you can see behind me here, they are anxiously watching that feed as you're talking about some of the first images of the Red Cross. You can't even see as people are standing up in their chairs. Dozens of these communities who have been uplifted from their homes in Kibbutz Be'eri. They've been staying here at the David Dead Sea Resort and Spa for more than 50 days now. Nearly 2 months they've been outside of their homes, but you can see this is a symbol of just how strong that community is, because although they might not be in their home in the south, they are all still together. All of them that are still here, I have to add, because that's why the energy in this room is so tense, because so far over the past 5 days they have been able to welcome home 12 of their community members. However, as I said, more than 24 were originally abducted, taken captive from their southern kibbutz community, and so they're hoping to see the faces that we're getting these initial images to see if more are going to be coming home tonight, coming home back to their community, able to see their loved ones for the first time. And so it's truly a mixed bag of emotions, because excited is not the right word, Benita, but hopeful. That is certainly the energy that we're seeing here tonight.
Hopeful indeed. We wait for confirmation. Thank you so much. For now, our correspondent Nicole Zedek at a hotel in the Dead Sea. Thanks, Nicole. Now we welcome to studio Yaki Dayan, former Israeli consul in Los Angeles, and our senior editor, Guy Azriel. Thank you both so much for being here. Another tense day, another emotional day. Let's start with you, Guy. What update can you share?
First, happy confirmation about the 2 Israeli-Russian nationals that have been transferred into Egyptian territory at this moment. We're speaking about Yelena Trufanov. She's 50 years of age, and Irena Tati, 73 years old. Both of them are now making their way into Israeli territory after already being at the hands of the Red Cross, as we still await the return of the remaining 10 Israelis that are being transferred at this hour into the hands of the Red Cross. 5 of them children, and the remaining 5 women of various ages.
And of course, it's always important. Every single life is important. Every single person is important. But Yaki, the nation hoping, of course, for all the children to be freed. Your take on what is unfolding right now?
Absolutely. I think that the two Israeli Russians that are being released right now is another demonstration that at the end of the day, the negotiations between Hamas and Israel was extremely successful, because what Hamas tried to do is to release only the ones who have foreign nationality, foreign passports. We refuse to that, and as we see, Israelis are being released first and foremost, regardless to their nationality. Now, regarding the children, by all means, I mean, this is we are so hopeful that the Bibas family is still alive, and this is only a psychological warfare. I think that there are still 10 more kids that are in captivity and hostage taken, and out of them 7 are going to be released today. So we still have a few more taken hostage, and hopefully they will be released as soon as possible, and the others as well. But the children is first and foremost. And if the Bibas family or I would say that the entire responsibility on the Bibas family is of the Hamas, and they cannot say that it's the Islamic Jihad or any other organization, because we see that they work hand in hand with the Islamic Jihad and other terrorist organizations in Gaza. So it's their responsibility to make sure that the Bibas family is alive and back to Israel.
And you can pass the responsibility within the terror factions within the Gaza Strip, but let's just remind the world that this all happened because of the terror onslaught, and civilians ranging in age from a 9-month-old baby to elderly Holocaust survivors were abducted and have been held in captivity for more than 7 weeks. It is unimaginable. Stay with us. We've got much more to discuss, because we're looking at the physical and psychological recovery for these freed hostages, and it's obviously going to take time as details emerge already around the conditions in which they have been held, the tunnels moving to different locations, the food they were given, and of course the fear. Here's more from Professor Dror Mandel from the Soreski Medical Center.
The children are in stable physical condition. They are presenting various medical challenges and also psychosocial challenges that we are attending to. Most of them are expected to be released in the coming days to their places of accommodation, except one child who has required longer medical treatment followed by rehabilitation.
We're evaluating them for the weight loss, which is about 10 to 17% of body weight for most of them. And then for deficiencies, everybody are getting supplements to start with, and then tailored with the specific types of deficiencies that they have. And we're going to follow this up, but this has a meaning, especially in pediatrics, and the consequences of such undernutrition for such a long time, for more than 50 days.
Horrendous accounts from captivity. We will unpack more of it, but right now we go to our correspondent Zach Anders, and he joins us from Sheba Hospital in Ramat Gan. So we're talking about these 12 hostages coming back home, including adults and teenagers. This is, of course, the 6th group to be set free since the truce started on Friday. Zach, what kinds of preparations are underway there right now as these hostages are heading home?
And the hospital staff director spoke with the media earlier and said they expect 4 here at Sheba Medical Center, but that could change. It is dependent on when this handover takes place. The initial care team that's at the border that will begin the assessment will then be able to radio ahead to the hospitals here in Tel Aviv, potentially hospitals closer if that's necessary, and be able to communicate what exactly is needed. But at the very baseline, the staff here is prepared and the rooms are ready. They're expecting to receive a handful at least. They could, in theory, take all of them if that was the case, but they have been split up by team into different hospitals in Tel Aviv. The additional level of care that takes place here is almost, it's unique to this situation. It's unique to what they're experiencing, because they are pulling in experts from all fields of medicine, preparing for what's been described to me as a slow reentry. They don't want to begin to psychologically begin to poke or prod too deep. They want everyone to feel comfortable and adjust to their surroundings and have the opportunity to get a good meal and to spend time with their families before they are subjected to the tests and the blood work and the sort of things that will happen over the coming days. But in the short term, if it doesn't appear to be necessary, it does sound like from the hospital staff, as they've communicated to us, that they don't want to inundate with all of their medical skills all at once, that this is paced out and that they do every effort they can to make everyone feel comfortable.
Thank you so much. We will be coming back to our correspondent, Zach Anders at Sheba Hospital. Thank you for now. Still in studio, Yaki Dayan, Guy Azriel, and now joining us as well, Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves, Doron Avital, former commander in the Special Forces in the IDF. So, Doron, I want to come to you because this process is underway, and it's now a process that we're getting used to as a nation. It's happened several nights in a row. Do you believe, in terms of the Israeli side, this is working and the truce as such needs to be extended so each day another set of hostages can make their way out of captivity back to Israel?
As long as those exchanges are in those terms, I think the Israeli public, the government, and the army, the military, think that we should continue. And of course, we are prepared to continue the campaign when it's needed. I saw Herzi approving the plans, the battle plans of the commander of the South, so we are ready. As long as there's exchanges, we wait. But I think it's working from our perspective.
What does that look like, though? Let's say there is a truce extension for 4 days, more sets of hostages come, but not everybody is back home, and Israel says the fighting will resume.
As long as it's a question of days, this is something that we can contain. Of course, the greatest dilemma would be when we'll come to the soldiers, and then the price will be a different price, and then there will be a real dilemma for the decision makers, to the military, in terms of the horizon of the campaign, and even the price that we would have to pay. This would be a serious dilemma. In terms of women and kids, we have to do whatever we can to bring them home and then see what's up.
So we heard Defense Minister Yoav Gallant saying today that we will do everything in our power to fulfill this outline of releasing those women and children. Having said that, the extension of this pause in the fighting is a prime interest of Hamas. As far as Hamas is concerned, every day of this pause brings them closer to the ideal of stopping this war altogether. This is the ultimate goal of Hamas with these ongoing delays and the ceasefire or pause in the fighting. Hamas, as it sees it, has 2 cards. The first is the international pressure on Israel to stop the fighting, and we see that only to a very certain extent. What Israel really cares about is what the Americans are saying, and for now, it does seem the Americans really understand what Israel is dealing with here. The other one, of course, is the hostages, and once we complete this mission of returning all the children and those women, the next stage will be the Israeli soldiers in Hamas's hands. We do not know the exact number of that, but quite a substantial number of those. When it comes to the return of the soldiers, Hamas is not going to demand just the release of thousands of Palestinian prisoners, but also the complete halt of the Israeli war in Gaza. And that is something that the Israeli government and the Israeli public will not agree to.
And that's something we will unpack in a while. But Yaki, I'd like your take. No one knows better than the pressure coming from the United States that Guy referred to. Give us a sense of how that is impacting the decisions that Israel needs to be making right now.
So I would say that there are a few tactical disagreements that we have with the Americans, and there is one major strategic disagreement we have with the Americans. But at the end of the day, and I'll say what they are, but at the end of the day, there is a complete understanding that the military power and the administrative power of the Hamas both should be eradicated. And it's agreed by the Americans and the Israelis, and there is no doubt that the war is going to continue. Now, when we speak about the tactical disagreements, the humanitarian supply, that including gasoline and all of that, that was a disagreement that Israel eventually accepted the conditions conditions that the Americans set. That was the first. The second one, which Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, is coming tomorrow, and he will insist, is that when the war resumes, the entire fighting is going to look differently in the south than the north, which means it's going to be much more, I would say, concentrated or less broader war than it was conducted in the north. Here we have a major disagreement, and I can tell you that as one who has 2 kids in Gaza now, I can tell you that we should definitely reject the American request about the South, and we are speaking about the strategic disagreement that we have is obviously about the day after, because the Americans already speak about the 2-state solution and all of that. But what Israel is saying, and rightly so, is beside the fact that there is no one now credible partner in the Palestinian Authority, within the Palestinian Authority, then can take over Gaza. Hamas is only the tactical problem of the region. Iran is the strategic problem of the region, and if we want to make a significant change in the region, we have to deal not only with the Palestinians, or not only with the Palestinian issue, but rather with the Iranians as well.
Something we're going to talk about in a very short while. Gentlemen, stay with us. We've got dramatic images on our screen right now. You can see something we've seen several nights in a row now, and you can see these ambulances waiting for the hostages to be freed and handed over. Obviously, there will be medical tests immediately. Let's find out exactly what it entails. We bring in our Middle East correspondent, Ariel Osira, and he brings us the latest from Urim Junction. Ariel, what is happening where you are? What can you tell us about the process for these hostages to come back home?
Right, Benita. So a lot of anticipation here in Urim Junction, where in a few hours' time, the convoy bringing home the 12 Israeli hostages who are expected to be released by Hamas. 2 Israeli Russians have been already released. That is according to the IDF, saying that according to information that it has, the 2 women, Yelena Tropanov and Irena Tati, they have been handed over to the Red Cross and are on their way to Israeli territory. Still no official confirmation or announcement regarding the remaining 10, 5 women and 5 children expected to be released in this 6th wave, 6th group of hostages to be released. Now, as for the process, usually as it's been going on until now over these in the 5 previous rounds, there is an expected announcement that they are handed over to the Red Cross, then that they have arrived in Israeli hands after crossing through the Rafah border crossing into Egypt. Those images that you were talking about earlier, I imagine those are the Egyptian ambulances on the Egyptian side of the Rafah border crossing. But prior to that, the hostages still have to be handed over to the International Red Cross. And as of now, we have not received word that that has happened. But once they are handed over to the Red Cross as expected, then travel through the Rafah border crossing into Egypt, they'll be greeted by a IDF group of officials who will give them an initial examination and then bring them over across the border to Israel. From there, they will travel to Hatzerim Air Base and expected to pass through Urim Junction, where I am standing right now. After that, they'll be airlifted to hospitals in central Israel for further medical examination. But also, in addition to that, as important, if not less, the much anticipated reunification with their families. We've seen heart-filling and heartwarming images over these past 5 days of these much anticipated unifications, and so hopefully those will be images that we will see this evening sooner rather than later.
And we just saw an image moments ago of a vehicle going past, a Red Cross vehicle, 2 Israeli Israeli Russians inside to reiterate that the Russians who have been freed are Israeli Russian citizens, and they have been freed a little bit earlier than the other group of hostages. As soon as we get an update, we will be coming back, of course, to our Middle East correspondent, Ariel Osaran, for the latest there from Urim Junction. Thank you so much. And we wait for that moment when we can see the families reunited. Thank you so much, Ariel. Yaki Dayan, I want to come back to you about exactly that, because we see these beautiful moments of families being reunited, but there are a range of emotions, because at the same time, a lot of these people have been in captivity and haven't any idea of exactly what unfolded on the 7th of October, and some of them have had to find out that their loved ones were killed 7 weeks ago.
Exactly.
It's beyond devastating.
Beyond. This is sadness mixed with happiness, because many of the hostages lost their family members, and they are coming back to split families, broken families. It's a long battle, uphill battle, psychological one as physical one. So, but you know, the good thing is that as an Israeli society, we are extremely united now, and they are being embraced by all the people, and I'm sure that they will be helped a lot. But anyhow, it's going to be an uphill battle all the time. We have to remember that we are dealing with monsters, with a terrorist organization that slaughtered, raped, beheaded people on October 7th, and not only that, but treated the hostages badly. They are not letting Red Crescent enter and see those hostages. Just yesterday, an old lady came back and she's fighting, or 2 days ago, she's fighting for her life.
She had no medication for 7 weeks.
Exactly. She was badly treated over there, and she was 84. She's 84, so hopefully she'll survive that, and we are wishing her all the best. But we have to remember that those moments are moments of happiness, but they are definitely mixed with a lot of sadness. People that are still in captivity, and people that lost their beloved ones.
And just to illustrate what Yaki said just here, when we speak about these two hostages that are being released today, well, Yelena Trupanov, first of all, both of them are residents of Nir Oz, kibbutz Nir Oz. Yelena was kidnapped together with her son and his partner. Both of them are still in captivity. And as for Irena, she was kidnapped while her husband was slaughtered in front of her eyes, just to illustrate the extremely terrible reality that both of them have to deal with, one of them losing her husband, the other one knowing that her son and his partner are still in Hamas captivity, and no word about when will they be able to see daylight at all, not to speak about coming back to Israel.
Doron, from a strategic point of view, we talk about Hamas manipulating Israelis, lying, the videos, the games, putting people on a list and then they don't appear, reporting that an elderly woman had died in captivity days ago, only for her to be on a list of the hostages freed. The mental games, and now we add in the Bibas family and the way this has been handled, the cruel claim from Hamas that they have been killed. It is not confirmed. Israel is unable to confirm it at the point. But talk to us about that Hamas strategy of duping the public over and above the trauma we've been discussing here.
I think Hamas doesn't only play in the battlefield, it plays in the public opinion field, it plays with the psyche of the Israeli society. I think also Hezbollah, the idea was to crack the Israeli society from within. We saw the rift in the Israeli society in the last year or so, and they were thinking this is the crack where they can enter, and they keep doing it, also with those psychological manipulation, trying to put a wedge between those two aims of the war, defeating Hamas and releasing the hostages, and using the leverage of releasing the hostages and preventing the possibility that we'll continue the campaign and defeat them in the end. So this is a cruel enemy. We have to be cool-headed when we play with those players. I mean, the pain is real, but we have to be strategic players and know how to win this campaign.
And they certainly knew that the Bibas family had become a symbol, and specifically baby, a 9-month-old baby, Kfir Bibas, had become the symbol of what had happened here. And it's blatantly obvious that every Israeli wants to see this child survive, wants to see this family come home to be safe and just to live their life.
You're so right, Benita. I mean, they became a symbol, the Bibas family. The 10-month-old redhead, beautiful baby, and the family, they all became a symbol in Israel, and the Hamas knows it extremely well. They are playing with, as Doron mentioned, they're playing with the minds of the Israelis. It's a psychological warfare. We should be ready that this kind of warfare will continue. Already they declared about one of the hostages that she was killed, and eventually she came back. We were very happy to see that, but we have to remember that those are the monsters that we are dealing day in and day out, and we should be ready for that. That's part of the negotiations with those monsters.
Yes, exactly. I think if these news would sadly turn out to be correct, and as we know, the Bibas family was captured while they were all on their feet. The mother was holding her two sons in her hands, as we can see here. All were safe and sound. When they were taken away, if they were murdered by Hamas, and Hamas attempts to claim that they were killed as a result of an Israeli airstrike. That's part of the lies that Hamas continues to tell, as it did in the case of Hana, one of the hostages that they said has died and eventually returned to Israel. If that turns out to be correct, that would cause a lot of pain, a lot of anger in Israel. But beyond everything, it will be another reminder for Israel, but I think for the entire world as well, as to what Israel is fighting against what sort of evil Israel is trying to eliminate, the evil of Hamas.
And it's an evil that has several layers as well, because over and above what we're discussing right now, Yaki, something you alluded to a short while ago, the Red Cross activity or lack of activity. In itself, the Red Cross didn't get to Kfir Bibas, a 9-month-old baby, now 10 months old. Didn't get to elderly people, didn't get to people who were sick. It's unacceptable. You work on the international arena. How was this allowed to happen for 7 weeks?
I agree. I mean, the Red Cross is really serving as a get taxi, as a taxi company, just transporting the hostages from one place to the other. The whole idea of the Red Cross and being supported by Switzerland, that this is a neutral organization that should get a process to any hostage wherever he is. And this is not the case here. We have to remember that we are dealing with a very cruel terrorist organization, and it's extremely hard, but nevertheless, we don't hear the Red Cross claiming against the Hamas. So yes, they have to deal with that, but with them. But nevertheless, they have to do their work and insist on that and call the word upon if the Hamas is not letting them, and not just serve as a taxi company driving the hostages from Gaza to the Rafah crossing point.
And very, very briefly, talk to us about the women's rights groups, the human rights groups. Where were they? And I'm talking about specifically in the US, Yaki.
And not only in the US and the UN organizations. Women were raped, were brutally mutilated. Horrible things happened on the 7th, and we hear again and again about women rights groups and all kinds of groups in the US and in Canada and in other places just not recognizing that such things happened. They are denying the truth. They are rape deniers, although that their whole issue is to defend women, and this is very unfortunate. And I see that as a combination of a lot of anti-Semitism. It's aimed against Israel, and it is also a combination of ignorance, and it's a pity. It's a pity because eventually it shows how the UN in general and those organizations specifically are not playing a fair game when it comes to Israel and to Jewish women.
Raises so many questions. Yaki Dayan, thank you very much for joining us here in studio. Always appreciate your insights. Guy and Doron are going to stay with us, and we are expecting that daily update, that briefing from the IDF's Daniel Hagari. It should be happening soon. If and when it does happen, we will, of course, bring it to you live, so make sure you stay tuned to this breaking news edition. Now, as discussions continue over that possible extension to this current truce, which we've been discussing here in studio, and questions are asked about the day after the war, which we've also been discussing, many are still asking how the Israeli intelligence community were blindsided by the Hamas terror assault in southern Israel on the 7th of October. More than 1,200 people were killed and thousands wounded at that music festival, in their homes and on bases. Plus, more than 240 people were abducted on that day. Our senior defense correspondent Jonathan Regev has more in this report.
The Israeli intelligence community, seen by many as the best in the world, filled with talented people and outstanding resources, but as we now learn, also filled with plenty of arrogance.
Leaders of Hamas being interviewed 3 or 4 days before the attack, saying that we are going to attack in a few days the whole area. So, I mean, where were the people there? Were they asleep? Were they absent?
As opposed to the previous thought, there was no intelligence regarding the widespread attack of October 7th. Various reports in Israeli media now suggest sources within the intelligence community, coming from the esteemed A200 unit, warned about it, but were ignored. They even heard communication in Hamas drills saying, "We killed the entire kibbutz." Why were they ignored? The reports suggest those warning were not high-ranking officers, and those above them ignored the warning, saying there's no chance Hamas will attack. For those who were part of this community, the behavior of the high-ranking officers is far from surprising.
Vanity, vanity, vanity. I know all. I know better than you. Who are you, a sergeant, to tell me that the Hamas is going to attack? I am the responsible.
Cynically enough, October 7th came 50 years and a day after the previous time Israel was surprised in similar circumstances. Junior officers presented plenty of evidence of an incoming attack just ahead of the Yom Kippur War, but those above them refused to listen. The people who fought back then gave their advice to the current commanders, but were also ignored.
We must never think that we know everything and that we are protected from everything. We should always be worried and careful.
50 years later, the lessons were clearly not learned.